Revelation 3344. From the 24th of November 1944. Fullness of divine grace in the end times. The abundance of divine grace will flow to people in the last days if they are in particular need of it. There is nothing insurmountable for the human being if he avails himself of divine grace, and this grace will not be withheld from anyone who requests it in prayer, who calls upon God for help. And it will only depend on whether the human being opens himself to the influx of divine grace, whether he sends a requesting thought to God or completely rejects him, and thereby closes himself off from every gift of grace. If he only enters into contact with God through his will turned towards him, he will also be able to dispose of grace, because it will then be due to him without measure. But if he stands apart from God, then God's grace cannot be given to him either, because this requires the human being's will, the acknowledgement of God through prayer. Even a thought turned towards God is enough for him to lovingly draw close to the human being and bestow his gift of grace upon him. Yet this can never be offered to a person who is hostile towards God, because then God's grace would be a means of coercion for that person's transformation. Although grace is always an undeserved means of help, a gift which is given to the human being through God's love, this gift nevertheless requires the human being's will to accept a gift, and God demands this will in order not to make him unfree. In the last days people will be able to avail themselves of an abundance of grace, for the greater the hardship the more lovingly God will consider those who approach him in supplication, and he will also grant grace to those who are still stubborn. But they can only become effective if the human being himself is willing to accept them. And therefore only the small circle of those who are faithful to God and carry him in their hearts will recognize the fullness of grace. They will receive an abundance of blessings because they ask and wait for their request to be fulfilled. Because they bring all their hardship before him and appeal for strength for their earthly path of life. Their pleas will not go unheeded. They will be helped in every adversity, in all situations and at the right time. And this is grace, that God obviously helps his own, that he strengthens and comforts them, that he always lets them find a way out in earthly hardship, that he takes care of their bodily and spiritual needs and that he sends them his word. He will obviously work and speak to people through his instruments so that they will become powerful and courageous and withstand all temptations. He will bring people together so that they shall stand by each other and strengthen themselves. And all this is grace. They are aids which are intended to bring them spiritual maturity and make the difficult time before the end bearable. Yet anyone who does not desire them has no share in the bestowal of grace, for the flow of divine love only takes hold of those who turn to him. The others, however, stand outside the circuit of God's love, and this through their own fault. For God does not reject anyone who approaches him. He does not withdraw from anyone who acknowledges him, he constantly distributes to anyone who wants to receive his gift of grace. But he who rejects it will go away empty-handed and will have to pay bitterly for this at the end of his days. On the day of judgment he will fall prey to destruction, from which divine grace can save him if he accepts and uses it in the knowledge that it alone can save him from eternal ruin. Amen.